The session is what role do national associations play in our industry? So to answer that, just a bit of context on the industry as a whole. How is advertising doing in the UK? Last year, in total, £22 billion was spent on advertising in the UK, of which out of home got about £1.1 billion. So that's about 5% of everything, and about 7.8% of display advertising. Within that 1.1 billion, 46% of that was coming out of digital out of home. That's expected to be over half by the end of this year, and it was actually dead on half at Q4 of last year, at 50%. So it's digital where really the revenue's coming and the growth is coming from. But let's see how that growth is tracking. So this is like looking at the last 5 years. Actually, if you go back over the last 8 years, it's been successive years of growth in out-of-home revenue, which is a fantastic story on its own. But you will notice that if you look at 2016 versus 2017, the growth rate has slowed down. So it was 6.6 up in 2016, it's 1.5 up in 2017. So that's worth thinking about, and how do we think about kind of explaining that? Well, let's put that 1.5% growth into a wider context. So here's all the year-on-year growths by the major media. You've got your print brands, you've got TV, direct mail, online, radio, internet, etc. And you'll see that across the board there, TV, for example, one of the biggest, 5 billion, was down 3% year on year. Yet, looking into that in a bit more, if you look at what the biggest advertisers in the UK are doing, some of them last year actually significantly spent more in traditional media versus online media. Those were your Tesco's, Samsung, Waitrose, even Google, an online brand, massively upweighted their spend in traditional media last year. Yet, some did the opposite. Virgin and Aldi, for example, reduced spend in traditional and allocated more over to online spend as well. So, fine, there doesn't seem to be a big overarching story there. What appears to be a kind of a sector-by-sector response. Big advertisers within their respective sectors are responding to different conditions in that sector and allocating their spend accordingly. If you want an overarching story, then it's probably one of around kind of economic and political uncertainty. So you've got Brexit, and we don't really know how that's going to play out yet. We had an unexpected general election result. We're not quite sure even how the next general election is going to go. And what that uncertainty does for advertisers is it tends to result in them holding back a bit, particularly on big branding budgets. And when you think about out-of-home, it's predominantly a branding medium, and some of the TV and some of the news brands obviously used predominantly for branding mediums. I actually think a 1.5% growth in that overall context of uncertainty isn't particularly that bad. The medium that does seem to be bucking the trend is radio. They were up 5%. This is their, I think, third or fourth year of growth consecutively. And radio seem to attribute radio's very good year to the explosion in the in-home voice-activated devices, your Amazon Echoes, etc. So that's the kind of the context. What's Outsmart's role? Well, our brief is to protect and advance the trade interests of our members and of the wider out-of-home industry. So that's two bits in that, members and industry. So from a member's perspective, what we try and do is to seek alignment and consensus among our members and build up from that. Now that sounds fairly straightforward, but in out-of-home it's actually quite challenging because across our membership, if anything, it's characterised by a diversity in different types of ad products, which all have their individual ways of selling them. So you've got different formats, different environments, and they all result in different needs and different competitive impacts, and naturally that can often affect what they think, or what they want out of their trade body. So finding the things to align and identifying what we can build consensus on can be challenging in itself. The other bit that we do for our members is naturally is we support them. So on a day-to-day basis, queries, questions, data, information, that kind of thing. On the industry side, what we want to do ultimately is just to make it easier to buy out of home. If it's simpler, easier, faster and more efficient to buy, we believe that then will increase the customer base and ultimately the medium will grow. And we also want out of home to take its place and have a voice in the wider advertising industry. So when you think about policy, when you think about self-regulation or or governments getting involved in advertising, we want out of home to have its voice along with the TV medium, along with the press brands, along with your Googles and your Facebooks, etc. So that's our kind of overall brief. When you have that diversity amongst the different membership, it can lead to some interesting ways of how, as an out-of-home trade body, we need to respond. So I'm just going to show you a quick video now. This is actual documentary footage that was filmed over the last few months at Outsmart.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He was the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
Sorry, I couldn't resist when I saw that. So, who are our cats? And actually, I looked this up. The collective noun for cats is a pounce. So this is our pounce of cats. And as you can see across there, you've got, obviously, they vary in kind of size and scale, but also they vary a lot in terms of the individual offerings that they have as advertising products. We also have another group here called resource members. Resource members essentially are not media owners. They don't sell the medium, but they provide product services that are of great value to the medium as well. And our membership is growing. I think this is an interesting KPI, as it were, for the sector. It's quite healthy. We've got 3 new members in the last few months, both associates, and we've had a couple of other resource members join as well, for which we are very grateful. That's really good news. So who are the cat herders? Well, there's 2 of us who work full-time. That's myself and Catherine, our communications manager. Justin is the chair of Outsmart, but he's usually pretty busy running Clear Channel UK. And then we have Andrew, who works for us on pretty much a part-time basis. And what Andrew does is he helps our members prepare all their inventory for measurement by route, which is quite a complicated process. So his work here is invaluable, particularly for our smaller members, to make sure they're getting the best out of their inventory. And where does Outsmart sit? What role do we play in the overall industry? Well, yes, we represent media owners, we represent sellers, but that means we need to have good relationships so that we can collaborate with the specialists, with the buyers, and particularly with their equivalent of Outsmart, the IPAO. We also need to forge strong relationships with other industry bodies, the Advertising Association, the Committee of Advertising Practice, the Advertising Standards Authority, because these are the ones that talk to government about policy. And then there's Root. Root is our industry measure. In my opinion, it's by far the most accurate, reliable of all of the media measurement systems for each of the individual media industries. So within that, we've got some great relationships there which we draw on in order to identify where we can align, where we can build consensus, and what can we realistically achieve. The other things Outsmart does is we manage a lot of industry tools. So Space is the biggest database of UK out-of-home inventory. All the inventory on there is standardized, so it can be transmitted through data. We have that contract, MediaTel manage it for us, and we set the agenda in terms of how we define scope for investment and where we go with investment into space. MGE data, they produce the IMS, the inventory mapping system. The inventory mapping system is essentially what feeds Root, the inventory on which Root measures and gives everyone all our planning numbers. And Outsmart manages that as well. Obviously, we don't manage Root. Root's a separate company and completely independent, but it's co-funded by the media owners. So that needs administrating. And Space and IMS by MGE all feed into Root, and that's where Root gets its inventory data from. So it's really important that we have that management and oversight. And lastly, there's IMD Optimad. They collect and produce all of the volume and expenditure data, which you'll see in Nielsen and in Ubiquity about who's spending where and how much in out-of-home as well. So that's another thing that we do. What we do, what our remit is about, serving our members, serving the industry, really comes down to doing the nuts and bolts stuff. So the things that we're doing here are all based around standards. Standardization is going to be fundamental to the medium and the long-term future of the out-of-home industry, because it's all going to be, it's more and more going to be automated, and that all relies on data, and data flows much better when it's standardized. So, as I mentioned earlier, developments in space, developing that product, developing the IMS, getting the volume and expenditure data right. What are we going to do about reporting and play-out reporting? Well, we'll be working on standards for those. Working with the IAB's Open Direct standard, because that's going to make it easier to transact across the different screens. With the advertising, the wider advertising industry, there's a huge threat at the moment around HFSS advertising. HFSS, high-fat, salt and sugar advertising, hugely important sector. The public health lobby are managing to convince the government that HFSS advertising is responsible for childhood obesity. There's a real policy debate going on there, because what's the evidence that actually shows that's the case? Doesn't the evidence show that it might be poverty, education, poor quality housing, those kinds of things that drive childhood obesity? Anyway, this is a debate that the industry's having, and it's one that out-of-home takes part in and has a voice in, because any impact on HFSS will hurt out-of-home revenue. And then you've got stuff that we do just for our members, not just the day-to-day support, but we also manage committees that look after other important areas of the industry, which I'll come on to in the next couple of slides. We work with PwC to collect, audit and interrogate our quarterly revenue so that we've got proper numbers. We help our members with Root and IMS, and then our communication strategy covers all of our social media across Twitter, our website and our mailers, so that we're out talking as much as we can about the news and happenings in and around the out-of-home industry. Catherine looks after that. But it's not just Outsmart that plays a role as a national association in our industry. These national associations can also play a role, to a certain extent, in the fortunes of out-of-home. What Thinkbox does, what Newsworks does, what Radio Centre does, can all impact, potentially, how out-of-home's revenues are doing. And one of the questions that's a legitimate question is, well, why aren't you producing more content like these other trade organisations? It's a straightforward question, and actually there's a fairly straightforward answer, which is on this slide, and I've highlighted the appropriate cell. Essentially, it's about resource. It's about resource and remit. Our remit is about our members and about the industry, and with 2 full-time members of staff, we have to pick our battles. So what we're doing is focusing on those systems that are integrated across the industry that will help bring alignment and consensus and benefit for the majority of all our members. And we're sort of delivering on that. With Root, if you think about Root, IMS and space development, our media owners are taking advantage of the new maps that are available in IMS. These are much better maps of indoor environments, so we get more granular measurement of indoor environments. Same with the Navtech updates that are now in the IMS. Andrew Atherton is helping our media owners take advantage of those as well. In space, we're adding island inventory to the database. And generally, we've got much better and more granular geography. With on playout reporting, we're very close to having an industry standard for playout reporting. I mean, I'm talking like maybe 2 or 3 weeks away from actually having that out there. So that's a spoiler alert, but watch out for that one. And with Open Direct, as an industry, as Outsmart, we fed into the consultation for Open Direct version 2, which will be coming in the next few months as well. And what that's about is trying to get the right extensions approved by the IAB so that they become part of that standard and Open Direct works more efficiently for out of home. Our committees are producing policies along things such as health and safety, environmental sustainability, and we've currently got a committee looking at digital consents, whether we can move to more full motion on large format, roadside formats, for example. And then on the wider advertising industry front, it's about trust. Trust in institutions is falling. Trust in government, trust in any institution, trust in the news, trust even in advertising is falling. There's survey statistics that show you this is the case. So we're working to rebuild that trust and to maintain it and strengthen it. So there's the Advertising Standards Authority at the moment are running a campaign to show the general public that advertising is regulated, that if they have an issue with an advertisement they don't like, there's somewhere that they can go. We're supporting that by donating inventory to raise awareness of what the ASA does. Self-regulation is very important. I've talked about HFSS, and we're also supporting SMEs. We're working with the Ad Association to do this. SMEs in a post-Brexit economy are going to be one of the key drivers of growth. But actually, within SMEs, they don't always have the people and they don't always have the expertise to really get the best out of advertising. So we're working with them to show them how out-of-home advertising will really genuinely affect their bottom line and working in different test hubs in the UK, and we'll be creating essentially a fantastic case study about how we can drive SME growth. Finally, there's a few other national associations I just think are useful to everyone here that we all rely on occasionally. The Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humour, all very good. Occasionally we need to look into the Association for Martial Arts. Naturally, I fully support the Cats Protection League. And finally, the Diplomatic Association. So, thanks.
Thank you, Tim, for this great presentation. I'm going to introduce myself and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Club du Digital today. I'm Vladimir Aubin. I am Sales Director EMEA for Broadsign, and I am also taking care of the presidency of the Club du Digital, which is an association in France. I've taken the presidency a year and a half ago, and that's a French professional network for digital signage and digital out-of-home industry that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about today. There are some members today, so I'll try to behave. Just a quick video that explains a little bit more. There's no sound, it's normal. There's no technical problem here. We are just introducing some of the people that are members, like they are the agencies, the software editors, as we are at Broadsign, some advertising agencies also, integrators, of course, content creation companies that we are working with, like Linkit, I think you mentioned, Barry. So the idea is just to promote these great media over France, and I will tell you a little bit more about what we do, what are the activities that we have, like the network meetings that we do on a regular basis, like every month, nearly 10 to 12 events a year. We are also promoting some of the members through the news of the members. So, and I will tell you a little bit more about this also later on. So, just before to tell you where we're going, just a little bit of history. If you want to know where to go, you better know where you're coming from. So we used to be the AppCAD. There is, I think, one of the founder members here in the room. APCAD is an Association pour la promotion de la communication audiovisuelle dynamique. The idea was to promote and stimulate digital signage as a new media. We all know that our media is getting more and more mature. Digital signage is getting, as Barry mentioned, we are probably going to get some revenues from the internet and the TV to the digital out of home. This is where we all want to go. But at that time, in 2005, it was really not the case. So we had to promote this media by saying, okay, that's a new media. Let's try to pour a little bit of money out of it. So that was the purpose of the club at that time. Then it became the Digital Media Association France. It was a little bit more open, not only to digital signage, because we had the feeling that we really need to enlarge our the people and the members that could join the club. And finally, in 2015, only 3 years ago, we really wanted to become a more professional club where we gather on a regular basis in order to make business, to educate the people on legacy policies, of course, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it also. So that's since 2015, this is where we are. We used to be 38 companies members. We are now growing pretty fast, because we have 55 members, so in only 18 months we have 17 new members, which is a kind of big growth. We are very happy with it. There is some strategy that we've put in place in order to have this growth. For the moment, it's only on the French market, but we're thinking about also growing, and maybe with the gentlemen around this room, there are plenty of ideas that can come up. So the board is compiled with people that are not getting any salaries. There is only one employee, so it's one employee. So it's Laurence Farinck, who is our déléguée générale. She's in charge of compiling everything, pretty much. I am the president. There are the vice president here in the room, and there are some other members. We are organized in commissions. So the idea is to, depending on what we are trying to get to the industry, we are doing some events. As I mentioned, 10 to 12 events. There are after-works events. There are breakfast events. There are policy events with lawyers that are specialized in digital out of home. We also have a committee in communication, inside communication with the members, outside communications, in order to promote what we do on the social network, of course. We are also widening our partnerships program with people that are with other associations, Digital Signage Federation being one of them, DPAA maybe, yours, Tim, will be a pleasure also. So the idea is to widen our scope, and by doing all this, we are recruiting some new members, on average 2 to 3 new companies every month for the last 18 months. So our mission is to educate, motivate, and communicate. Educate the market. I think the first white paper was in 2006 or 7, something like this. So what was the digital signage at that time? We just like a normal white paper. We have rewritten this white paper. That's something we provide. We have national observatories of the data of what's going on the digital signage, and especially the growth of this market. In France, it's about 16% growth in 2017, and in our market, which is quite a big growth. We are also DBCI, which was provided by the previous OVAB that you might have heard of. We are also providing newsletters on the industries and what are the people, what are the members, what they are doing, so about their news, and the legal workshops. The last one was 2 months ago. It was about GDPR, which is, of course, something in the very important at that time. Networking, connecting people, I think that's very key. I don't know anybody in this company, in this room who doesn't have any memberships in one of the associations in the industry. I suppose if there is any, they would not raise their hand if I ask the question, so I'm not going to ask the question. But, I mean, the idea here is really to connect the people as much as we can and to make sure that we are all growing in the industry. For that, we are doing some after work, some speed business meeting also, and conferences. We also have some partnerships with international association. So we communicate through exhibitions, like here today. But of course, when there is a show in France, we are providing some window to speak. For the members and also for people in the industry. We're also providing some discount for our members to be members to other associations or to other events. We provide them discounts. And we have some press partnerships like LSA, I don't know if you are familiar with it. It's a very famous grocery press magazine in France, and all the industry of grocery stores is reading it, and it's pretty big, and so we have a partnership with them, just to name a few. And we are promoting on the social network, as I earlier mentioned. So the kind of members we have, there are some manufacturers, some software companies, some wholesaler IT, some content agency, communication agencies, advertising agencies. Of course, we are widening our association. The idea, and I think the gate between the TV, the internet, and the digital out-of-home is getting more and more obvious. So, of course, at some point we will probably widen and keep on widening our footprint in the industry. And here are some of the members of the club. You may know a few. Exterior Media is taking care of the London Underground here in the UK, but there are also members. Exterior France is one of the members of the club. So, as I mentioned, there are some manufacturers, there are some network operator, media owners, integrators, software editors, as I mentioned, and yeah, we are very happy to welcome all these people in order to gather the industry and growing this industry together.
Okay, thank you.